So tonight, I'm going to tell y'all the story about how I lost my mind and tripped balls, completely sober, due to isolation and probably a little dehydration as well. But I think that this isolation that I went through probably prepared me to help folks feel the isolation and deprivation of COVID. We all felt pretty disconnected and alone, didn't we? So back in 2017, before I went to seminary to become a pastor, I worked in software startups doing sales. And I was about a year and some change before I came out as trans. And if you remember what 2017 was, it was the year of the bathroom bill. So I was already having a pretty bad year. And then I got fired from my sales job. And then I had to sublet my apartment because I couldn't afford it anymore. I sold everything I owned, and I traveled around in my car all over the country for a few months. And I wish I could say that I was leaning into my faith during that time, but it was waning pretty heavily. And I wish I could say that, I was lost and found Jesus, but y'all, I think that's a bunch of crap, and I'm not that kind of pastor, okay? So I know that Jesus said that he told the rich man to sell everything he owned and followed him, right? So I can check that off the box that I did that one right. And before Jesus starts his ministry, he does 40 days alone in the wilderness. So before I started seminary, I decided that I would do 40 days alone in the desert of Moab, Utah. And what I found in the middle of nowhere was myself. One morning, a little over halfway through my 40 days in the desert, I heard singing in a canyon that was nearby. So I decided I was going to hike on down into that canyon and tell those people that they had beautiful voices and let them know how much I appreciated their singing. Y'all, I spent half the day in the desert sun just to pay people a compliment. And then I realized while I was doing this that there was no one out there. I just wanted to see people and talk to people. And by the time I realized that there was no one out there and it was probably just the wind, I was completely sunburned. So I went back to my camp and I cried because I was so desperate for human interaction. That evening, I realized just how dehydrated I was when I tried to eat dinner, and I ended up throwing it all up. I was also ruminating on every god-awful thing I had ever done since I could remember. I kept thinking how awful my life had become. So in all of my self-loathing and hatred, I tried to relax, drink some water, and I built my fire. And I stared at it for what felt like hours. And then I looked up and I saw myself. And this was not like one of those out-of-body experiences where you're dreaming and you're hovering over yourself in a dreamlike state and you're like, oh, there I am. No, I saw me staring across the fire at me. And at first it scared the hell out of me. You know, I was looking at my hands and looking at my feet, touching my body just to make sure that I was real. Making sure that there wasn't some strange mirror in the desert that no one had told me about. And when I looked up at myself, I realized what I was doing. My head was in my hands and my shoulders were shaking. I was watching myself sob uncontrollably. I was making these guttural noises that one makes when they're like a toddler throwing a fit or someone who is deeply, deeply grieving. And then I realized, no, I could hear him. So I wondered if he could hear me. And so I asked him. I said, hey, you okay? He trembled and he shook his head. He said, no. He then began to tell me every terrible thing he thought about himself. How he deserved to be in a world that didn't understand him. How he deserved to be out there alone. And how no one gave a damn about where he was or what he was doing. And then I watched him just fall apart from the weight of his own despair. My despair. And I told him, I said, I cared. Now, I cared deeply about what you are doing out here. I think you're so brave for being out here alone and facing your fears. I'm so grateful for your heart that's just breaking apart. And then I forgave him for every terrible thing that he said about himself, myself. And finally, I said to him, you don't have to be some idealized version of perfection. You know, you're enough for me. You're not alone and lost. You're just finding yourself. We chatted a little more throughout the evening, but the more I spoke to him, the more he seemed to kind of fade away into the smoke. And I fell asleep by the fire that evening, and when I woke up in the morning, I had a pounding headache from the dehydration, and my face was streaked with dirt and tear tracks. The rest of my time in the desert was pretty uneventful and actually really peaceful. But I had to accept that time alone with myself changed me. And I'd never be the same again. I'll probably always be a little weird from it. And I walked into that desert alone and lost. But I think maybe that's how I found myself. Thank y'all.